A soft, golden light kissed the New York City skyline. It was September 11th, 2001, a Tuesday, and the city was stirring awake. Below, the streets buzzed with the familiar rhythm of a new day. Coffee carts rolled out, taxis honked, and the sidewalks began to fill with the steady stream of humanity heading to work. From above, the Twin Towers, monuments of ambition and steel, pierced the cerulean sky, reflecting the promise of another beautiful autumn day. They stood tall, symbols of American ingenuity, oblivious to the horror that was about to unfold. Families ate breakfast, commuters rode crowded subways, and the morning news channels offered their usual blend of local headlines and weather forecasts. It was a day like any other, imbued with the mundane beauty of everyday life. No one could have predicted that by noon the world would be irrevocably altered, that the very fabric of peace and security would be shredded, and that the names of these iconic towers would forever be etched in history, not for their height, but for their fall. At 8:46 a.m. Eastern Time, the unimaginable happened. From the serene blue, a roaring metallic shriek tore through the air. American Airlines Flight 11, a Boeing 767, slammed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. For a fleeting moment, disbelief reigned. Was it an accident? A tragic, isolated incident? Smoke billowed thick and black from a gaping, fiery wound high above the city streets. Emergency services scrambled, their sirens wailing, cutting through the stunned silence that had fallen over lower Manhattan. Then at 9:03 a.m., the second blow. United Airlines Flight 175, another Boeing 767, pierced the South Tower, erupting in a fireball that painted the sky with horrifying orange. Live television broadcasts, which had just begun to show the smoking North Tower, captured the second impact in real time, sending shockwaves across the globe. The notion of an accident evaporated, replaced by the chilling certainty of a deliberate attack. Panic erupted. People ran, their faces etched with terror and confusion. Ash and debris rained down like a grim snowfall. Inside the towers and in the surrounding streets, chaos reigned. The sounds were a symphony of horror. The roar of jet engines, the shattering of glass, the groans of buckling steel, and the desperate cries of those trapped and those fleeing. Firefighters, police officers, and paramedics, displaying a courage that defies description, rushed into the burning buildings, into the very maw of hell, while others ran out. They ascended stairwells filled with smoke and fear, their only thought to save lives. The stories from within those towers are a testament to both the fragility and the resilience of the human spirit. Imagine the calls, desperate and heartbreaking, made from smoke-filled offices, from floors above the inferno, by people who knew their time was short. Tell my kids I love them. I'm trapped. The smoke is getting bad. We're holding hands. We're praying. These were the final goodbyes, whispered into phone lines, carried across impossible distances before being swallowed by the smoke and the flames. Melissa Doy, a manager at a financial firm, called 911, her voice shaking but clear amidst the rising panic. I'm on the 83rd floor. We can't breathe. Can you please tell them to hurry? She stayed on the line, bravely giving details, until her voice faded into the static, a life extinguished too soon. Kevin Cosgrove, on the 105th floor of the South Tower, made a desperate call to his wife. His voice was filled with terror, describing the building shaking, the smoke, the heat. His last words, captured on a 911 recording, chillingly predicted the inevitable. Oh God. Oh. Followed by a roar and then silence, as the South Tower began its catastrophic descent. And then the unthinkable. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower, which had been struck second, collapsed into a colossal cloud of dust and pulverized concrete, a monument dissolving into nothingness. The sheer scale of the destruction was incomprehensible. A collective gasp rippled across the world. Less than half an hour later, at 10:28 a.m., the North Tower followed, succumbing to the same fate, creating a second, even larger, mushroom cloud of devastation. The images were apocalyptic. A once vibrant cityscape transformed into a dusty wasteland, shrouded in a pall of smoke and the acrid smell of burning debris. The air was thick with the particulate remains of thousands of lives, of countless dreams. For those on the ground, the experience was surreal. Running, choking, covered in dust, they emerged from the cloud, forever changed. Meanwhile, a third plane, American Airlines Flight 77, struck the Pentagon at 9:37 a.m., tearing a gaping hole in the symbol of American military might. And in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, United Airlines Flight 93, whose passengers, having learned of the other attacks, bravely fought back against the hijackers, crashed into a field at 10:03 a.m., likely preventing an even greater tragedy in Washington, D.C. The bravery of those on Flight 93 who chose to fight rather than surrender is a profound testament to the human spirit. Their final act of defiance saved countless lives, turning a hijacked plane into a weapon of self-sacrifice. In the immediate aftermath, as the world reeled, the United States government began to piece together the narrative. The official story, quickly solidified, pointed to Al-Qaeda, a radical Islamist terrorist organization, and its leader, Osama bin Laden. From his hidden strongholds, bin Laden declared war on America, citing U.S. foreign policy, particularly its presence in the Middle East and support for Israel as the impetus for the attacks. President George W. Bush, thrust into a crisis of unprecedented scale, quickly articulated the nation's resolve. In the iconic rubble of Ground Zero, with a bullhorn in hand, he promised justice. "I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon." His words resonated with a grieving nation, providing a glimmer of defiance amidst the despair. The global response was immediate and overwhelming. Nations around the world offered condolences, support, and solidarity. The world stood with America, united in condemnation of the brutal acts of terrorism. But beneath the surface of this unity, a new chapter was being written, one defined by fear, suspicion, and a declared war on terror. The official narrative became the bedrock of U.S. foreign policy, leading to the invasion of Afghanistan to dismantle Al-Qaeda and depose the Taliban regime that harbored them. Later, it would also serve as a justification for the invasion of Iraq, though direct links between Saddam Hussein and 9/11s were never definitively established. Yet even as the official narrative solidified, questions, whispers, and outright challenges began to emerge. In the wake of such a monumental tragedy, it was perhaps inevitable that alternative theories would surface, fueled by disbelief, distrust, and the sheer incomprehensibility of the events. These theories, often dismissed as conspiracy by mainstream media and government, gained traction in certain circles, feeding a persistent undercurrent of doubt about the official account. One of the most perplexing elements for many was the collapse of WTC-7. This 47-story skyscraper, located a block north of the main World Trade Center complex, was not hit by a plane. Yet at 5:20 p.m. on September 11th, it too collapsed, straight down in just 6.5 seconds, exhibiting characteristics that many engineers and architects found eerily similar to a controlled demolition. The official explanation attributed its collapse to uncontrolled fires combined with structural damage from the collapse of the North Tower. However, the precise, symmetrical nature of its fall coupled with the fact that it was the first steel-framed skyscraper to ever collapse due to fire, raised immediate red flags for a growing number of observers. Why did WTC-7 fall so perfectly and so quickly when it wasn't directly hit by a plane? This question became a rallying cry for groups like Architects Engineers for 9/11's Truth, who argue that fire alone could not have brought down the building. They point to the squibs of smoke and debris seen ejecting from the building just before its collapse, often associated with demolition charges. Then there were the put options. Reports emerged of an unusual surge in put options bets that a company's stock will fall placed on the airline stocks of United Airlines and American Airlines in the days leading up to September 11th. These trades, if made by individuals with foreknowledge of the attacks, would have yielded massive profits. While regulatory bodies investigated, no definitive conclusions linking these trades to insider knowledge of the attacks were ever publicly established. However, the sheer volume and timing of these particular trades continued to fuel speculation about suspicious early knowledge by some groups. Who placed these bets? Were they ever identified? And if so, what were their connections? The lack of clear public answers only deepened the unease for those seeking a more complete picture. Another persistent point of contention revolved around the response of NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command. With multiple planes hijacked, many questioned why the U.S. air defense system, designed to protect American airspace, failed to intercept any of the flights before they reached their targets. The official explanation cited a series of communication breakdowns, protocol failures, and the unexpected nature of using hijacked commercial airliners as weapons. However, critics argued that the response time seemed unusually slow for a nation with such advanced air defense capabilities. Why were fighter jets poised to scramble not in the air sooner? Were drills happening that day which confused the radar? These questions persist, leading some to suspect a deliberate stand-down or a systemic failure that went beyond mere technical glitches. And then a detail that, for some, painted a truly unsettling picture. The announcement on September 10, 2001, by then Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, that the Pentagon could not account for $2.3 trillion in transactions. This colossal sum, essentially missing from the Pentagon's budget, was announced just one day before the attack on the Pentagon itself. While no direct link between the missing funds and the 9/11's attacks has ever been proven, the timing struck many as incredibly coincidental, adding another layer of intrigue and suspicion for those who believe in an inside job scenario. Was the attack on the Pentagon, in part, an attempt to destroy financial records? Perhaps one of the most bizarre and often cited elements by conspiracy theorists involved the so-called dancing Israelis. On September 11th, 5 Israeli men were arrested in New Jersey after they were seen filming the burning Twin Towers and allegedly celebrating the collapse. They worked for a moving company, Urban Moving Systems, which was later found to be a front operation for Israeli intelligence. The men were detained for 71 days, and despite initial reports from local law enforcement and eyewitnesses suggesting suspicious behavior, they were eventually deported back to Israel, with the FBI concluding they had no prior knowledge of the attacks. However, one of the men, in an interview on Israeli television, later admitted, "Our purpose was to document the event." This statement, coupled with the mysterious circumstances of their arrest, detention, and deportation, ignited a firestorm of speculation, with many asking why their actions were not more thoroughly investigated and why there seemed to be a media blackout surrounding their story in the mainstream. What were they truly doing there? And why were they released so quickly? These are just a few of the many threads of inquiry that have continued to unravel in the years since 9/11's. The absence of comprehensive, publicly accessible answers to these questions has allowed alternative narratives to flourish, driven by the desire for a more satisfying explanation for such a profound and devastating event. Voices of dissent, often marginalized and ridiculed, have continued to demand further investigation, citing what they see as inconsistencies in the official account. The attacks of September 11th profoundly reshaped the world, both domestically and internationally. In the immediate aftermath, fear and unity intertwined. The U.S. government, with broad bipartisan support, moved swiftly to enact sweeping legislation aimed at preventing future attacks. The Patriot Act, signed into law just over a month after 9/11's, dramatically expanded the surveillance powers of law enforcement and intelligence agencies. While proponents argued it was a necessary tool to combat terrorism, critics warned of its potential to infringe on civil liberties and lead to mass surveillance. The balance between security and freedom became a central and enduring debate. The war on terror, initially focused on Afghanistan, soon expanded. The invasion of Iraq in 2003, justified by claims of Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction and alleged links to al-Qaeda, further broadened the scope of U.S. military intervention and destabilized an already volatile region. The cost of these wars in terms of lives and resources has been immense, leaving a lasting legacy of conflict and humanitarian crises. Culturally, 9/11's became a defining moment. It spawned a new era of heightened security at airports, transforming air travel from a routine convenience into a labyrinth of checkpoints and screenings. The sight of the Twin Towers, once symbols of economic might, became an enduring image of vulnerability. The attacks permeated popular culture, inspiring countless books, films, and documentaries, each attempting to grapple with the trauma and its aftermath. Trust in government, already fragile for some, was further eroded by the unanswered questions surrounding 9/11's and the subsequent policies enacted in its name. The rise of independent media and online communities provided platforms for alternative viewpoints to gain traction, challenging established narratives and fostering a new era of skepticism. Over 2 decades have passed since that clear September morning. The rubble has been cleared, a new tower stands at ground zero, and memorials honor the fallen. But the emotional scars remain, etched deep into the psyche of a nation and a world. The memory of the innocent lives lost, the bravery of the first responders, and the profound shift in global consciousness endure. Yet the questions persist. For some, the official story, while providing a framework for understanding, leaves too many gaps, too many unsettling coincidences. The theories, once whispered on the fringes, have gained a wider audience, propelled by the relentless pursuit of information and the power of the internet. Was it a simple act of terrorism by a foreign enemy, as the official narrative states? Or were there darker, more complex forces at play, as some believe, hinting at an inside job or a catastrophic intelligence failure that allowed the attacks to happen? The quest for truth, in all its forms, continues. It is a testament to the enduring human need to understand, to reconcile the inexplicable, and to find meaning in the face of profound loss. Whether you accept the official account or lean towards the alternative theories, one thing is certain: September 11th, 2001, irrevocably altered the course of history, leaving behind a legacy of both tragedy and an unrelenting pursuit of answers. If this story opened your eyes, made you remember, or made you question, please like, share, and subscribe. The truth may be buried, but together we can dig.